Hi, I thought the intro would start.
Aye, is it not?
No, it says we're live anyway. That's funny. Hi, yep. Another episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. We've got myself and we've got Ross, and we're here to talk about what happened with Celtic against Kairat Almaty. Ross, I'm kind of a wee bit perplexed by the kind of the anticlimax of that intro there. But I
We
guess
are definitely live though, yeah?
it says live. It says
Aye.
live. In fact, do we have any comments? Oh, we've got 2 people watching. Must be live.
Must be live.
Right. Okay, Ross. First off, before we even get into the Celtic, okay, because there's plenty to talk about. You're obviously wearing an Oasis t-shirt, so for the people who don't know, they won't know. I had a ticket as well to go to Murrayfield on the Saturday, and I had a freak accident, if you could even call it that, where my foot just stopped working and I couldn't even walk the length of myself. I was hopping about like a madman, and by the Saturday, I had to give my ticket to Franny because I just couldn't make it. I was completely gutted. But you went on the Tuesday, so you obviously got to see Oasis. Obviously, you're a massive Oasis fan. I was really looking forward to it as well. I don't even listen to Oasis nowadays, but whenever you hear the tunes, they just bring you back to your childhood. So before we talk about Celtic, a wee word about Oasis. How was the gig, and what is your favourite tune by Oasis, and what's your favourite album as well?
So I was there on the Friday with my brother.
Friday. Sorry.
Aye, it was a tremendous gig. Like, that's the 8th time I've been to see Oasis. First time I went in 2000, when I was 16, to Murrayfield incidentally, and that was amazing, obviously. And then all the other gigs that I've been to since have been amazing, but that just felt a little bit different. It was just special. It was just, you threw that nostalgia into the mix as well, and it just, as soon as fucking the Bushes came on, I just like turned to my brother and I was like, oh, like started as if I was going to go, and then I was like, come on, it's Oasis. And just started bouncing about, but it was a tremendous gig. It really was.
Did they open with Fucking in the Bushes?
Well, that's usually what they walk on to, aye.
Yeah, right. Cool.
In the early days, it probably would have been, what would it have been? Maybe the Swamp Song, I would guess. Because Fucking in the Bushes, well, I've been going to see Oasis in 2000. That song was released on the Standing in the Shoulder of Giants album.
Yes.
So it's always been their walk on. I've been going, but I would guess that it would be the Swamp Song before that. Can't really remember. But, it was a brilliant show, as I say. And I capped off the end of the night by getting on the wrong train and ending up in Linlithgow instead of Bathgate. So I had to get the wife to pick me up at about 1:30 in the morning. She was none too pleased. But it was a tremendous experience. And I really hope that they do more gigs. I would probably, off the back of this, I would expect probably Nebworth maybe next year. I think that would be the 30th anniversary of Nebworth. That might be their swan song then. But I think off the back of this tour, they might have to do that.
Aye. Well, I'm certainly banking on it because I missed my opportunity, so I need them to continue doing more shows. But for me, although I don't really listen to them now as much as what I used to when I was a kid, for me, their second album, What's the Story, Morning Glory, for me, that's their best album. And my favourite tune, my favourite tune is actually that self-titled one, the Morning Glory. Just the intro, that the guitar does that, it just kind of rings out. Brilliant. Followed by, do you know what I mean? I love that. And epic intro as well with the kind of helicopter sound. Brilliant tunes anyway. What about you? Favourite album, favourite tune?
It's really weird because I change my mind all the time. They just got so many good songs. Probably it might be a less popular answer, but I would maybe have to say that the Master Plan is my favourite album. And it's an album of B-sides. Any budding band would be delighted to have that as their debut album in Oasis weren't even going to release it as one. But favourite song, probably. I've went through lots of different ones. I had Talk Tonight for a while. Right now, just off the back of that gig, Little by Little was pretty special, and that is obviously not as early a song as others, but I love that song. I also, and it's weird because the songs I'm mentioning are predominantly sung by Noel. I obviously love all the big classics that Liam sings, but another favourite of mine is Sunday Morning Call. I love that song, but obviously I like all the big stadium tunes, but I have to say that Do You Know What I Mean is one of my favourites, right down to the video for that song. It's absolutely epic. Liam looks absolutely brilliant in it. It just looks so cool. Class song.
Good answer. I like it. And for Graham Bell, welcome, Graham. Thank you very much for watching, and of course for your comment. And you said that the Tuesday gig was the best gig ever, greatest rock and roll band in the world. Well, let's get into it, Ross. Let's get into it. So obviously Celtic were playing on Wednesday night against the Kazakh team, Kairat Almaty, and our worst fears came true. We never lost the game, okay, but it kind of feels like we lost it. It was a nothing each game, and the Kazakhs look so pleased with themselves because they know that going back to their home country in Kazakhstan, Celtic have never won there. It's just a notoriously difficult place for teams to perform as they normally do, with the altitude, with the plane journey. It's going to be a hard task. So before we kind of dissect the performance of Wednesday night, before we do the autopsy, before we get into a lot of the juicy topics, I want to ask you, where do you stand right now in terms of rating our chances for, I think it's next Tuesday that we play. I think it's a 5:45 kickoff. What's your level of optimism that we can go through in the second leg?
Well, I mean, you would probably have to say 50-50 with it being 0-0 at sort of half time. But if you then bring into play all the other factors, some that you've spoke about there, like say the altitude, the travel, the fact that we're away from home, then I'm loath to say, does it become less than 50-50 for Celtic? But then you think, it's difficult for me to say we've got the better players and the better team after looking at that performance the other night.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know if you're going to go into the performance, but for me, that team, they actually surprised me. They looked quite confident on the ball. And I don't know what the script was with Celtic, but every time they turned it over, they looked like they could cut us open at will. And certainly mostly in the first half, they didn't get as many turnovers in the second half. But it's going to be a really difficult task over there. It's one that it's not beyond us. It's not like it's important. It's not like we're going to the Bernabeu or something like that. But it's going to be a very, very difficult task, and I wouldn't like I like a wee bet, but I wouldn't be putting copious amounts of money on Celtic getting a victory. And to be fair to Celtic, in the sort of maybe last couple of years, certainly last season, their away performances in the Champions League against teams of that calibre, if you like. You look at, was it Zagreb we played, I think, and it was 0-0 over there. We obviously, we were the better team. We probably should have won on the night, and we were like kicking ourselves that we actually didn't take all 3 points. I'm struggling to recall the other sort of teams. I don't think there was any other like team of that calibre that we played away from home. But you look at even the performance last season against Young Boys at Parkhead, we weren't very good that night, and we got out of jail with a sort of deflected goal. Well, it wasn't sort of, it was a deflected goal. But and that was a really poor performance that night. But we created a hell of a lot more than we did the other night, because I'm sure, if memory serves me right, Kyogo had a hat-trick of offside goals.
That's right.
So if they go over there and they perform to a similar level that they did in Zagreb, then there is opportunities there. I don't know if this team are as, let's say, maybe as dynamic, as athletic as maybe the, I forget their name now, the other Astana. I don't know if they're as athletic and as sort of speedy and technical as that Astana side was. It's difficult off the back of that one game to tell that, but it's going to be a very, very difficult task. And I wouldn't say I'm brimming with confidence, but by the time the kickoff comes around, I'll probably be buoyed and feeling good again, hopefully helped by a victory against Livingston. But it's going to be a tough task. There's no getting away from it.
I do agree. I've got no degree of confidence, but I think it's, as you say, it's like 50-50 or maybe 60-40 in their favour. I think that's pretty much where I'm at right now. But Cal McGregor, he said in his post-match comments that we can do it, no problem. You know, I don't have qualms with that. Some people took offence to that. Some people get really irked by that. But I don't have any problems with the captain saying that. We don't need to think about past performances that we've never won in Kazakhstan. This is this team. Let's judge them on what they can and cannot do. We don't judge them on what their predecessors have failed to do. So we've got a couple of comments here again from Graham Bell. So no excuses. We blew it on Wednesday. We should have won that game. Totally lost faith in the board, taking us to a higher level. That is a theme that we'll get into later on, talking about the board and the blame that they must take for this. And from Phil McGinley, thank you for joining us, and thank you again for your comment. A surprising result, but at the same time, it's not surprising at all. We definitely all feel like we've read this chapter before. Yeah. Right. Well, Ross, I want to kind of talk about whenever I got back from the game, and one of the group chats I'm in, one of my mates was saying like Celtic should be good enough to beat that team, and I was completely angry, so emotional, coming back home, and still feeling so much hurt after that full-time whistle. And my initial response to my mate who kind of said that, and I guess a lot of people in the media and Celtic fans would be saying that as well, we should be good enough to beat them. But was that thinking wide of the mark? Why were we so dismissive of the opposition? When I had read media reports, watched Celtic Podcast, which I do a lot of, and the scouting reports that some podcasts had put together on Kairat, they were saying, look, they're not a great team at all. They're technically poor. They misplace passes. In transition, they are wide open to the counter. And people were talking about, you know, what scoreline will it be? I think that we were very, very wide of the mark in that. I think we were dismissive of that team. And I think that some of us were guilty, not pointing fingers, I'm just saying as a collective maybe, that we're guilty of judging teams by reputation, saying, I've not heard of Kairat, therefore Celtic, the almighty Celtic, are going to beat them. We need to stop thinking about what we did, how far we got last season against Bayern Munich, almost taking them to extra time. That's no longer the Celtic that we are right now. We don't have the same personnel, and we're badly lacking in freshness. The morale of the team is down. We're asking the same players to continue going back to the well to deliver the standards of yesterday. We're in a mire right now, and it's difficult to dig ourselves out of it because we're looking at each other saying, are you going to be the man? We're looking at people like James Forrest, people like Yang, hoping that they're going to have that magic to kind of to make the breakthrough. And I just felt that we were kind of complacent, expecting that the reputation alone would be good enough that would suffice, that would get us through. But I guess one of the questions is to yourself is, can we actually say with all honesty that it was an under par performance, or have we actually proven that we're simply not operating at the required standards that a Celtic team should always have. So we'll go into the performance, but I guess the kind of the overall takeaway, like, are we a much worse team than what we thought we were, or are the Kazakhs actually better than what we gave them credit for before the match?
I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know if you were alluding to the fact that maybe Celtic, the players and the management, were taking them lightly. I don't know, but certainly I think the fans probably
Yeah, that's
were.
what I mean. I don't mean Brendan Rodgers or the players. I mean the whole media narrative, and even the Celtic fan narrative as well.
Well, to be honest with you, speaking for myself, I was definitely guilty of that. And the reason I was guilty of that is because I based my opinion on what we could do against them off the fact that they struggled to put out Bratislava in the previous round.
Yeah.
And we dispatched them 5-0 last season. But then that's probably silly of me because, as you said there, the now. Is this, well, that's the question, is this Celtic team a lot worse than what they were at that point? And you would probably have to say they certainly are worse. They're certainly weaker. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Nobody can argue or deny that. Certainly that the front three, where in your home tie, that's who you look to make things happen and get the goals that will get you the lead in a tie. And Brendan Rodgers said it himself after the game. It was actually the press conference rather than the interview. He said that it's the lightest we've been at the top end of the field going into one of these qualifiers. It really is. Like when you're, I mean, before a ball was kicked, I jokingly said, I think it was maybe in the chat, one of the chats anyway. I said, I can't wait when the lineup came out. I said, I can't wait for 60 minutes when we bring Yang on to replace Ida, because he's been absolutely terrible. And that says it all, because Ida has been rotten. Yang is not good enough for Celtic. As much as I think he's got abilities, he's not going to cut it at Celtic. He's not got the end product. And we're looking, in a qualifier, we're looking at Yang to come off the bench and replace Ida to make things happen. And actually, in Yang's defence, he made things happen quite quickly. But that initial minute or two, he's like Boyd to be coming on the pitch. It subsides and he starts going into headless chicken mode again. But I've sort of veered off there a wee bit. But to answer the question, we absolutely are weaker. Certainly at the top end of the pitch. You look at the defence, it's no different for last year. We've obviously added Kieran Tierney, but the problem is he can't play a full 90 minutes now. Or if he does, I don't know. It seems like he can't. He's being managed at the moment, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a backup. So are we weaker in the left back right now, albeit Kieran Tierney is a better player than Greg Taylor? We probably are, because or we've plateaued because Kieran Tierney's better, but he can't do a whole 90 minutes. And we don't have a backup. No. The midfield, I think you have to say that we're not weaker. We've improved. We've got Negrin in, but it's that front, that front three, the top end of the pitch. There's no Kyogo anymore. There's no Kuhn. We're struggling because Jota's out injured. So it doesn't make for good reading at the minute. We played the first game against St Mirren, and it was a very abject performance, similar probably to the one the other night, where we huffed and puffed and had no creativity, but eventually Luke McCowan gets the goal. But again, it was a winning goal, and he takes a shot, but it was a deflection. I don't even think the ball was going in. Not to take anything away from McCowan, because he came on and he did well in that game. And then, what was the second game of the season?
Aberdeen.
I felt like we played okay in spells, but that was one of the ones, and I think you said it yourself, Gavin, it goes down as a professional performance. It wasn't an outstanding performance. And I sort of look at it like, you could say it's early in the season, we're just getting up to speed, but last season we started flying. So you could say we're getting up to speed, but it's not helped by the fact that we're really lacking in bodies and quality at that top end of the pitch. We dispatched the Falkirk really well, but again, it wasn't an outstanding, scintillating performance. We had a really good press that night and swarmed all over Falkirk, and that's how we got our goals. Because Falkirk try and play they try and play a bit of football out for the back to an extent, but they've not got the quality players that Celtic have got. And Celtic, when they've got that press against the lesser opposition and they're trying to play that way, Celtic will always pick them off. So there's not been an outstanding performance, but there was more hope off the back of the Falkirk performance. But then it was back to what it was in the first game of the season. Because, to me, it's because there is no real quality at the top end. You've obviously got Maeda, but then you're looking to Ida, who is he's not going to do. I know I made the case last season. I would like to see the guy get a pre-season. That wasn't me saying that he's a good player. In his first spell and his loan spell, I was saying that I didn't think he was a very good player, albeit he scored a lot of big important goals. I felt like that elevated him to a better player than what he actually was. Then he had the really good performance against Kilmarnock when we clinched the title, and I thought, right, okay, maybe there's something to work with. But then it didn't really happen from last season performance-wise, but he got the goals off the bench. So you're like, right, okay, is there something that they work with still? Because he's not getting a run of games. He's getting a run of games now, and he's pish. That for want of a better word, he's not a good football player. And then you look at James Forrest, who I absolutely love, but he's 32 now, 33, and I know that's not old for a football player these days, but we shouldn't be looking to a 33-year-old veteran to go and make things happen in a Champions League qualifier. It's not how you want it to be. And I know I've not defended as such, but tried to provide sort of a bit of reason as to why signings haven't been made. And they're just, that's not me defending the board or anything like that, but it's just trying to look at it from different angles apart from they're not wanting to spend money. But apart from all that, we just haven't got the quality at the top end of the pitch now to make things happen, to stretch teams, make defenders second guess themselves, pull them out of their position. Because the St Mirren game and the game the other night, the defenders didn't have to work to get their clean sheet. It was just stay in your shape. James Forrest did not have the beating of his man. Maeda wasn't getting beyond his man. And obviously Rodgers, I don't know if you've seen the press conference today, he said that Maeda's kind of been struggling with cramping up and stuff like that. So we've got a sort of maybe 75-80% fit Maeda. We've got an Adam Maeda who's rotten. We've got James Forrest, who at that level we shouldn't be going into that game expecting him to be the one to... He's okay to come in and be a squad player in the league domestically. But when we get into the Champions League and we're trying to get that £40 million bounty and get into the top table, James Forrest shouldn't be the guy we're looking to now. But he is. And that's why we're not probably firing on all cylinders like we did at this stage last season.
I agree with you. It's a good summation what you said about the games that we've had so far in this season. The St Mirren game at Parkhead, as you said, that was extremely tough. And I think as long as our personnel situation continues as it is, e.g. a lack of freshening up the squad, if more teams come to Parkhead and play like St Mirren did, then we're in for some right trouble. The Aberdeen game suited us more because we're playing away from home, and they're obviously getting urged on by their own fans to have a go at us. So that allowed us to kind of use our experience and exploit the spaces in behind. The game at Parkhead against Falkirk, well, they are quite an attacking team under John McGlynn. But whereas, probably their best player on the day was Calvin Miller, who was a Celtic youth product at one point, so it just kind of shows you the gulf, and that's how maybe we were able to capitalise, because despite their style, they just weren't able to cope with us. But people like St Mirren, they experienced players who know how to perform, how to organise themselves. That's the ones that are going to cause us problems. And there was kind of parallels with them and Kairat in terms of the way that their defensive shape was set up to thwart Celtic, not allow us spaces, and it was so frustrating. But I think, you know, looking back on it, it shouldn't be a surprise. It really shouldn't be a surprise, as Phil McGinley said earlier on. He said it's a surprising result, but at the same time, it's not surprising at all because we've seen this chapter before. For the past 6 months, Celtic have been a bit of a struggle to watch. You know, like we've showed that we can't beat Rangers in the last 6 months. We can't turn up for those games. We can't show that our superiority over them, and we even failed to show up properly in the cup final against Aberdeen. You know, those big games when you're meant to perform. We've been failing, and obviously it's culminated in this first leg abject performance against Kairat at Parkhead under the lights when we were kind of expecting to go through. So the first half, as you kind of pointed out, we were extremely poor. It was like a wasted first half. I think Brendan Rodgers might have alluded to that as well. If only we could go back and restart that. Second half, after the halftime team talk, there was a bit of urgency. You know, we almost scored immediately, straight from kickoff, and it shouldn't take, you know, Brendan Rodgers giving them a kick up the arse to start like that. But again, we kind of tapered off once more in the second half. I guess one particular question is, should Rodgers have started with Maida up front, because we just look more dynamic? If you think about the Bayern Munich games at Parkhead, we started with Ida up front, but I think in the final half an hour at Parkhead in the first leg, we then changed it around. Ida came off and Maida went up through the middle, and we looked a totally different team. And then going into the game in Germany, the second leg, Rodgers stuck with that, and I found it a really bold move, an aggressive move. And if you were to think it from a pragmatic point of view, you would say no, start Ida. But if the shoe was on the other foot and you were the opposition fan, you're thinking, I don't want them to start Ida up front, because that's where they can actually cause us problems. And that's what Rodgers did. He was brave, and he went with that, and we got.
He also had Kuhn and Jota to pick for, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Like the supporting cast to complement Maida, of course. But for this game, he started with Ida up front, and that's the way that I would have went, Ida up front, because we're really lacking personnel. We don't the wingers. You really don't want to be bringing Tilly on, so that means that you're juggling with three wingers. You've got Maida, you've got Yang, and you've got Forrest. So ideally, you're going to play two of them with Ida up front, and Ida's obviously scored in the Champions League. So you're thinking, well, he's done it before, he can do it again. But Ida had a terrible performance, a forgettable one, and he obviously gets hooked at half-time. So I guess one of my questions was, should Rodgers have started with Maida up front from the beginning? But in hindsight, I don't think he really had a choice. I think he had to start with Ida to give him that opportunity. And Ida's his confidence must be rock bottom right now. And if we never had these personnel issues, then Ida would probably be on the bench again for the next few games. But we're in such a crisis right now that you don't want to be playing Telio. So it's the lesser of two evils. Do we kind of persevere with Ida? So I guess one other question I want to ask you before we speak about the board is, how much blame does Brendan Rodgers take as a manager
for the performance the other night? Or
yeah, because people are saying we should be good enough to beat them, but on the flip side, we've probably proved that we're not good enough to beat them. But for some of the players, people like Hatate, McGregor, Johnson when he was on, you know, Tierney, he didn't even have his deliveries into the box weren't brilliant. Maida's kind of off the boil. Is that down to the players, their performances? Did they have to take accountability, or should Rodgers have been able to galvanise them better, make tactical tweaks? Obviously, he's got a wealth of football knowledge which I do not possess. So when I'm watching a game that's not working for us, I don't know what the solution is. But that's Brendan Rodgers' expertise. So I guess whenever he looks at himself in the mirror on Wednesday night after the game, how much blame does he apportion to himself, or does he get off scot-free?
Well, I don't think he gets off scot-free, because obviously he's the manager. But I think that when you're operating with the options that he has at the top end of the pitch, like we've just spoke about, it's very difficult for if the performance is abject, which it was, to look to your bench and go, right, who's my game changer? Now, he brought Engels on. Now, I rate Engels, and I think he's a really good player and all the rest of it. He's not a game changer. He's a guy that can do things in the middle of the park. He's a presence, and he can help start attacks. He's not a game changer. He's not a guy that you would look to and go, he's going to have a shot from outside the box and get you a goal. It's just not his game. But what he can do is put a fantastic delivery in for a dead ball. And I felt for me, I felt he should have started Engels because of that, because I think it would have been a really good weapon for us in the game throughout it. Albeit, as big as Adam is, I don't think he's that great in the air, but corner kicks and stuff, scales is quite dangerous. And I just think you seen it. Was it Falkirk Engels started against? I think it was. And his delivery, that was last Friday night. His delivery was first class, right, putting it right in a sixpence. But again, hindsight maybe. But I felt before the game I would have started Engels. But listen, it's Negrin. Did he have a great game? No, but he had a good game at Pataudry. He set up one, he scored one. So maybe he's picked Negrin off the back of that performance and thought he's going to probably be more likely to get me a goal than what Engels would. You have to weigh these decisions up, but at the end of the day, he's picked a team that you would expect for back to middle, and then the team that he's picked at the top end of the field is what we've got available. Excuse me, is what I would have picked. But like I said before, there's nobody. He's not pulling defenders about the place to allow room for Maeda and Forrest to then exploit. He's too static. So have
you noticed? Sorry to interrupt. Have you noticed McGregor in the past couple of games? McGregor having a right go at Ida in terms of lack of movement whenever they're trying to work something in final third. He's not following the pattern of play. He's too static. He's not being mobile enough to pull people out of the way. And I've seen Brendan Rodgers have a go at him as well. One of the most frustrating things I think in football is players who've got no ability to learn. Adam Ida, he's never going to be, sprinting away from people and stuff like that. He's not going to be the most agile of players. But what you can do is develop your football intelligence, be coached and things like that. But it's a really, really worrying sign if your own teammates are having a go at you continuously during games and the cameras are picking up on it. It's such a bad look. But forget that. It's even worse, a player not being cognitive in order to put that into practice, to develop and to help the team further. It's really, really frustrating. And that's one thing that he has no excuse for.
I would agree with that. But by the way, I feel like listen, I don't rate Adam Ida. He's not for me good enough to be Celtic's number one striker. But I feel like there's a wee bit of, but I don't think we're meaning it, but it feels like it's coming across like we're laying all the blame at Adam Ida's door. But at the same time, Adam Ida can be effective at times in a really good functioning Celtic team. You look at the Aston Villa game, we weren't amazing that night, but when we did get it right on occasion, he was there to put the ball in the net. When we worked it wide and we got the ball across, he did get himself in there and he got his goals. So as much as Adam Ida isn't firing on all cylinders, and I don't think he's a very good player, there's not a lot happening behind him to set him up, to help him out. And obviously Cal McGregor feels that he's not doing enough to provide angles and pull defenders about and stuff like that. But you look at James Forrest now, Adam Ida's looking for service into the box. That's probably his game more than what, like say, Diogo would make the runs and stuff like that. But he's looking for service into the box. And James Forrest never beat his man once. And the midfield, to me, Hatate in small spells. There was maybe one time he managed to get to the byline with a really good bit of skill. And he put a fantastic cross in, it was cleared. But you look to guys like him to show a bit of creativity for the middle of the park, find that slide rule pass. But then again, you think of that, and then you think, but if he does not making the run, how's he supposed to find the slide rule pass? But there was one time in that first half where we moved the ball quick, and when we did, Maeda got in behind, albeit it was saved by the goalkeeper, and I think it ended up he got a goal kick out of it, which it was. But I think we're not moving the ball fast enough. It's veering into that second half of the season in Rodgers' first season, where because we never had the personnel in the wide areas, we had Maeda on one side, and we not Maeda, we had Palma on one side, and I can't remember who was on the other side, and they weren't offering like to get to the byline. Palma couldn't beat a man, he couldn't beat his man. That's what was happening the other night, and when that happens, the midfield then starts shunting it from side to side, and the team who are sitting back, it just becomes so easy to defend against. They just shuffle over, and they just block the spaces. And the fullbacks are confident because they know that the man they're marking is not going to get beyond them, whether it be Palma. Forrest can do it, but he didn't have the beating of that man the other night. And I think when your wide men are struggling, and listen, I love Maeda, but he is struggling now. And I'm glad that Rodgers has came out and said it's partly because he isn't fully fit with tramping up and stuff like that. When your wide men in a 4-3-3 are not functioning, it then affects your midfield. And then when you're playing that low block, that's when a Celtic, and certainly a Brendan Rodgers Celtic, move the ball from side to side, and it becomes really predictable. That's what happened the second half of his first season, because he didn't have the personnel. He's now again not got the personnel, and the way he wants to play is not happening because the personnel that he's got available aren't able to do the things that he wants his team to do.
That is a fair assessment. Can I move on to one final kind of tactical question to yourself before we do get to the board? And it was the kind of the theory of Dyson Maeda playing through the middle as a central striker. Now, I think we all would agree that Dyson Maeda is more effective than Ademida. But I guess this is probably more of a hypothetical thing. If we were able to buy the players that we want to buy, where would you as a manager want to place Dyson Maeda, whether it be the left forward position or up through the middle? Now, we've obviously got a debate about that in our own group chat for the Endless Celts. McGinty is a massive advocate for Maeda playing through the middle, and that's what he does for Japan, and that's what he did for Ange Postecoglou at Yokohama Marinos. I think for me, Maeda's most effective as long as he's in the first 11. It sounds like a cop-out answer, but it's just because of that absolute mad quality that he's got as an absolute pressing machine. No one can replicate that. So even whether he's bringing that from a winger position and putting the fullback under pressure, or from a central forward position and putting the centre forwards under pressure, either way, it's just so effective that I don't ever want to leave him out of a squad. But he's got major flaws, Dyson Maeda. He's more just instinctive, off the cuff. But whenever he's got time to think, when he has to plan a move, that's when it kind of falls apart for Dyson Maeda, in my opinion. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on the theory of playing him through the middle, and the examples I'm going to throw at you, which have kind of cost us dearly, is at the very end of Wednesday night against Kairat at Parkhead. It gets behind the defender from a through ball, got a one-on-one chance with the keeper, and it was a powder puff finish. Before then, last game of the season in the cup final at Hampden, he's got a one-on-one with the keeper, and it's another powder puff finish.
I can't remember that one.
A few weeks prior to that, at Ibrox, it was the one each game. in injury time, he gets put through one-on-one with the keeper. Now, with a bit of presence in mind, he could have squared it to the supporting teammate who was running into the box. Dyson elects to try to take it round the keeper, and he fluffs his lines. Keeper collects the ball. Those were three massive opportunities in big game moments, which could have, if he scores them, then all of them become wins. So I guess my question is what do you want from a centre forward? Do you want it to be Dyson Maeda, or do you want a proper goal scorer who is calm under pressure, who knows where the goal is, he's able to put it in the corner? What do you value in a centre forward, or is it? And I'm not talking about right now because we've got a personnel crisis, but in an ideal world, when we're able to buy the players that we want to buy, where does Dyson Maeda fit in your team? Does he go back in the left or up through the middle?
100% on the left. The way you framed that was perfect, to be fair. It just, for me, he has played that striker, but I don't look at Dyson Maeda and go, you are a number 9, you are an out-and-out striker. It doesn't scream that to me. It doesn't scream an out-and-out left winger either, by the way, because his delivery isn't perfect. But when Greg Taylor was in the team, I wanted Dyson Maeda out on that left because he was a good protection for Greg Taylor, especially when he came inside and Maeda could get back and cover him. He was great out there. He's shown that he can play through the middle in this Celtic team. He did it the second half of last season. He scored a lot of goals. But let's not forget, it was a really good goal scoring season for Maeda that year. He also scored a lot of his goals for the left wing. So this, because he came in and scored a lot of goals, doesn't mean... And by the way, this isn't me disagreeing with McGinty. He can play both to a really good level. But Dyson Maeda in this Celtic team, I want to see him out in the left. Even now that Kieran Tierney's in the team, I want to see them linking up when they're both at full tilt and fully fit, because Maeda, he can come inside and be really effective and really give defenders a problem, while Kieran Tierney is now overlapping, which Greg Taylor didn't do. It's a different challenge for a defender. Do I go with Tierney or do I stay with Maeda? I'm interested to see that. But not only that, for me, as we've said, Adam Maeda, again, say it to the cows come home, he can't be our number 9. But as much as Dyson Maeda come in and done a job in that area of the field for his last season, he's not a Kyogo, he's not a Rodson Edward, he's not a Dembele, who you would say are out and out central strikers. Maeda can play across that front three and be a problem for most teams, but he's not. I wouldn't say Maeda is an out and out winger. He's not an out and out striker. He can do it all to a really good level. But I want somebody, their primary job, they are a striker. That they don't come in and go, oh, by the way, I can play in the left or I can play in the right. No, I want you to be your number 9. Be the central guy. That is what you specialise in, scoring goals. And that is your number 1 and only job in the team, is to be the striker. So that's what we need in. And Dyson Maeda, when that happens, if need be, can come in and help out in that middle area. But he's your left winger.
Aye. That's good. I appreciate that response. Right, so I guess we're moving on to the next topic. We can do the sack the board chance. Do you want to go into that? That tasty.
You've got the reins.
Right. Okay. So I think the chance during the game started roughly about the 67th minute. Ironically, that's whenever we started to sing the
Heat of Lisbon.
And the Heat of Lisbon. But for a moment, I thought, I wonder if this was pre-planned. But I don't think you would ever go into a game with the ringleaders of the choir saying, we're going to sing Sack the Board. I think it must have been spontaneous. and it must have just been coincidental it happened on the 67th minute, because I don't think that people can be that pessimistic that they're going to start singing "Sack the Board" when you don't know what the score's going to be. I don't think it was premeditated. I guess that's the point I'm making. However, the song did start, and I think, as you said, that you were watching on the TV, and once the song started, the camera panned to the Celtic board. It's been a long time. It's been a really long time, Ross, since we've heard the "Sack the Board" chants at Parkhead, and although you can't literally sack the board, it is quite symbolic. And it's a really, really sorry, sad state of affairs that we're in whenever we've got this kind of disharmony between the fans and the board. There's always been disharmony, but it seems like it's certainly notched up quite a few levels now. I don't know what theories you would have in terms of the transfer window and how it's panned out the way it is, but things came to a fruition. This was a game that we were expected to win by fans, by media. We're playing against the lowest ranked team out of all of them in that qualifying round, and we can't break them down. We can't score, and we're heading for, a negative result. So whenever you heard that, I guess, what's your thoughts? Did you feel it was justified? What was your initial thoughts when you heard that? Was there any part of you which felt kind of vindictive, like, I'm glad that they're singing this because this is justified, I want them to feel uncomfortable?
It's a difficult one, because when it initially started, my initial reaction was, when it panned to them, I was like, I'm glad they're hearing this. But then at the same time, I was like, I don't know if it's helpful. I think that the board already know, in this day and age with social media and stuff like that, they know how the fans are feeling. They know there's unrest. They know they're not happy that the players haven't come in. To me, you're at the game to support the team, and we were in a really tough moment where we were trying to at least get one goal, and probably doesn't help the players hearing that coming through the stands. But at the same time, I did get the sentiments here. I do get the frustrations, because it's another qualifier. Again, and it looks like I'm contradicting all the things I've said for a long, long while, but I've never said that it's okay that the players haven't come in. I've always just tried to provide sort of reasoning as to why the players aren't coming in, and not just saying. I struggle to sit. I struggle to think that board are sitting there and going, "We're no signing MD. We're just want to stay in front of Rangers." I don't think it's as black and white and as cynical as that, in my opinion. But I did 100% got the sentiments of that chant and why it was done, and I was glad that they were there in the stadium and did hear that. But what difference it'll make, I don't think it'll make a huge deal of difference, because I think that they'll still go about their business the way that they have been, the way that they always have. And however that may be, I'm not going to sit here and slate guys who are professionals when I'm not privy to all the facts. Listen, I'm like every other Celtic fan. I would love us to have all the players in early, and like the team to be ready to go for the Champions League. And should it be where all the players are in? Possibly. But without me being privy to all the facts, I'm quite reluctant to say they're no doing their job, they're no trying, all the rest of it. You hear all the things that people say. It's a difficult one. I didn't like the chant per se, but I absolutely got the sentiments and I got the frustrations, because I'm as frustrated as the next guy that we don't have the signings in, and we're going into matches. We had Adamida as our striker, James Forrest, who I love, and looking to the bench and bringing Yang on to try and change a game. It's not good enough. It shouldn't be where we are. It is where we are. Why we're there, I can't answer.
We've got a couple of polarising opinions in the comments, which I will bring up. See, in terms of like negative displays from fans in the ground during games, I would never boo a Celtic player. I think that I would never ever do that. And to be honest, I don't really think Celtic fans do that. Only
I
the
don't
last
think they were booing the players.
yeah. So I don't think we ever do that. But in terms of negative exhibitions towards the board, I think that we do that. Not very often, obviously. Wednesday night was the first time in a very long time that that's happened. But I completely do condone that. I'm against booing players, which obviously never happened. But the board is a different kettle of fish, and they are the reason that we're in this position right now. I felt that they deserve the hostility that's coming towards them. Now, I'm completely against. Remember that video where it was like a Celtic away game, and there was a fan speaking to Peter Lawwell outside the ground, and he was right up in his face. Totally against that, because for me that's going into the territory of personal abuse, invading someone's physical space. Totally against that. But whenever the board are sitting in their comfy leather seats watching the game, and the way that things have panned out, they totally deserve the boon. They totally deserve the chance of sack the board. And I don't, people saying that was pure Henry they boos, totally disagree. I totally disagree. If you think that we should have higher standards and not do that during the game, if that's your opinion, fair enough, but I totally disagree. People might say, we'll leave it until the 90th minute or until the final whistle. But at that point, it loses its impact because half the crowd have already left by that point, and the board are, going back into the corridors of Celtic Park. It loses its impact for me at that point. They should be doing it as they did during the game, where it gets its full effect, the full attention, where the media are able to pick up on it and run their headlines. We need to put them under as much pressure as possible. So I'm absolutely fine with that. But in terms of the comments we've had in the past few minutes regarding that, you're a loyal Muppet. Usually boos happen after a few bad results, not after just a draw. It's still only half time. Get a grip. Although I don't think that encapsulates the situation. I don't think you're really understanding the gravity of what we're going through right now as a club. If you're that nonchalant about the situation right now, then I think that's a poor position to have if you are indeed a Celtic fan. From Graham Bell here, sack the board is justified. I totally agree with that, Graham. The current board are as bad as the Kellys and Whites. Take money out of the club and don't invest it when it's clearly needed. Kuhn and Kyogo replacements are so needed. Yeah, the warning signs have been there for ages. As we said earlier on in the podcast, we've been playing really, really badly for the past 6 months. We've got players who we knew that wanted to leave. Kyogo left in January. We knew he wanted to leave last summer. We've done nothing about that at all.
Sorry, Gab, when you go.
And Kuhn, obviously, it was well advertised that he wanted to go. He has gone. We've still done nothing about that. And Jota, he's got a long-term injury. We've just, what is it like? Prepare to fail to prepare to fail. So I think it's entirely justified. What were you going to say, Ross?
I was just going to say, just to sort of play a wee bit of devil's advocate. Just to try to think of an example. So for example, right, we brought Kyogo in, right, and we got a really, really good player there, and we paid $4 million for him, I think, at the time. Ange was obviously well aware of him, which helped. Do you think now that we're selling guys like Kyogo and the board? This isn't. I'm not saying this is absolutely my thoughts. I'm just saying that this could possibly be a reason, right, as why things are maybe slower than they are. So, do you think that now that Kyogo's left, they've sold guys like Kuhn, the board are listening to the fans and Brendan Rodgers, and they are trying to get that higher quality player, which is going to cost more money, just for talking, say, £8 to £10 million, right? Do you think that they're struggling to convince that type of player to come right now because that player's saying, well, you can't offer me Champions League football, but what I'll do is I'll come if if we were straight into the Champions League, it would be easier to convince an £8 to £10 million player to come to Celtic because they are coming to play Champions League football rather than playing the Scottish League, I think is my point I'm trying to make. But listen, I don't know, but is that making it more difficult to convince that level of player because they've got other offers on the table, whether it be England or Germany or Belgium or Holland? There'll be other clubs in for these players, and I think Celtic could be struggling to convince them to come to us, especially when we haven't actually got the Kairat Champions League football yet. So they're now going into it. And listen, it might be a bad example because in previous seasons when we've had qualifiers, we've always been at this stage where we're struggling for players and we've not got the squad where it needs to be. So it could be a bad example, but it's just maybe a reason in this current situation why things aren't happening as quick. Would you agree with that? Or
yeah, well, I wouldn't discount that as a possibility that there are some players who will be influenced by the guarantee of Champions League exposure, which is what we want to advertise our club is doing in order to flip players on for a profit. So there will be players who fit into that bracket where they'll be reluctant to join us unless they know that they've got Champions League football guaranteed. However, I think if your transfer window is dependent on that group of players who are quite, if you want to call it, a mercenary, in terms of they'll only sign for us dependent on that particular thing. If we're narrowing our search so much to only target those types of players, then we're doing something wrong. But quite literally, the whole world is our oyster in terms of transfer recruitment. We can look everywhere. We can look for gems that don't have that kind of cynical attitude. I don't know how Ange would have approached that sort of thing. Speaking to players, Ange was very, very cutthroat. He wanted players who wanted to play for Celtic. It's not every season that we can always guarantee football or guarantee Champions League football. But if you think of Ange and the way that he would speak to players, if he had any doubts that a player wanted to sign for Celtic, he probably just would have moved on to the next target because he was really, really big on mentality. And if your mentality is you'll only sign for a prestigious club like Celtic on the promise, on the guarantee that you'll get Champions League football, then maybe that's not the type of player that we need who's going to benefit the squad. Is that the type of attitude that we want to fill our ranks with? Mercenaries, that's pretty much what I think of. So in conclusion, if we're only targeting those people who are bending us over a barrel until the 11th hour before we get to hear the yes or no, then quite frankly, I don't think we're doing our job right if that's what we're focusing on. We should really, really widen our search and find players who want to play for Celtic, who benefit us. If we can't get Champions League this year, then they'll try even harder to get it for next year. That's the type of calibre of player that I want in Celtic. So yeah, don't perform just for the big bright lights. You perform week in, week out, help the team strengthen, and then you'll get your just rewards in the end. So that's where I'm at. Aye, but no, it's a good. It's a fair question.
I know. I mean, I don't disagree with that at all. But it's sort of there's a bit of an idealistic view to that because, like, I think that's what we all want. That's you want to sign players that want to play for Celtic, and you want to sign really good quality players that want to play for Celtic. But I think in reality as well, you have to look at it and go, well, the top level or the level of player that Celtic fans want us to get now, they for me would probably choose Belgium or Holland over coming to us. I think people keep using this example of Club Brugge. They sold like £50 million worth of players and they signed like 20 million or something. I can't remember the exact figures, but well, there you go. Then it's there.
They're a very, very good example.
Well, it isn't a great league, but it's the point is it's probably a better league than Scotland. Whether it be a great league, but it's a better league than Scotland. It's probably got better TV deals. It's much like when they're doing the comparison to Club Brugge now because they're the in vogue club, if you like. They're doing well. A couple of seasons ago, it was Copenhagen. They were the in vogue club that were doing quite well in the Champions League. They're not doing so well now. They hadn't done so well in the Champions League for like 20 years previous to that. Club Brugge, I think Celtic beat them maybe 3-0 in the early noughties in the Champions League, if memory serves me right. And that, for me, was when Celtic were going through a really good spell in the Champions League, where they were spending money, obviously the Martin O'Neill era and stuff like that, and we were getting out of groups under Gordon Strachan. I just feel like, yes, Celtic could do more, but these examples, Copenhagen and Club Brugge, are only good examples when they're doing well in a period. Club Brugge are going through that wee period now. Celtic had that wee period in the early noughties. Copenhagen had a season in it, and then they've done nothing since. But they only get compared to these teams when that team's doing okay or doing well. There's never a comparison. I don't hear any comparisons to Copenhagen now. When what they're doing, they're not doing that great. I don't even think they're in the Champions League. They weren't in the Champions League last year, I don't think. So they only get these the comparisons to these teams when it suits the narrative for me.
Well, at the moment, we want to be where Club Brugge are at in terms of
Of course we do. Aye.
We want to be there. And another thing, I noticed that I was looking at their sales. They sold one guy for like 35 million. We seem to be hitting the ceiling where we can't get much more than what was it, Matt O'Reilly? It was 25, maybe with a 5 million add-on to 30. Just I think with the kind of the prestige of your league, which Belgium has got slightly better than the Scottish league, and I think you can get kind of higher transfer fees as well. But don't want to kind of go off a tangent with that. But yeah, of course, we're at where we're at right now. We've got a few weeks left until I think it's the 1st of September whenever the transfer window closes. But in terms of trying to affect the second leg in Kazakhstan, we can't do it right now. We're going to have to do it with the players that we've got. I wanted to kind of get your thoughts as well about. In fact, we'll keep that for later. Why don't we take a wee a change in direction right now? So, one of the features that McGinty had introduced into the podcast, starting with this season, was kind of like a Celtic by numbers thing. So we're going in order from 1 to, I don't know, 99 at some point. We might get to there. So this week we're on number 6. So what we're talking about is certainly since maybe like the early 90s onwards, whenever people were assigned squad numbers and they stuck with that for at least a season anyway. We're going from that era and speaking about players who wore the number 6 for Celtic. So I put it in a group chat earlier on, some people that we could maybe choose from. So just try and recap that. So in recent memory, we've got people like Nat Phillips, Moritz Jens, Nir Beaton, Kelvin Wilson, Jos Højveld, Landry Nguemo, Bobo Balde, Alan Stubbs, Peter Grant, Brian O'Neill. Do you remember Brian O'Neill?
Yeah.
Aye.
I remember when he fell on his arse against Brian Laudrup.
Oh,
They lost 1-0 at Parkhead.
It was fucking terrible, man. And Pat McGinley, Gary Gillespie, and Mick Galloway, Mark McNally. And I guess we'll stop there because after that, we're kind of going into the 80s. And as I said, we're kind of trying to keep it from the early 90s onwards whenever people were assigned squad numbers and they stuck with that. So, Ross, gave you the list in the group chat and you were able to pick whatever player that you wanted to speak about. And it's not a biography that we're expecting, but just some details of what you remember of the player, any kind of interesting anecdotes, just a kind of a nostalgia topic. So, who was it that you had chosen?
I picked Moritz Jens.
Moritz Jens. What do you reckon? You think we should have bought him? Should we have bought him, or were we right to let him go?
Well, it's weird because at the time, I think we had CCV and Starfelt as obviously the partnership, but then I think there was a wee spell where CCV was out the team, and him and Jens and Starfelt had to play. I think they played a European game. I think it was in Germany, and they had a decent performance together. I can't remember who it was against, to be perfectly honest with you. And I can't remember if it was in the Champions League or not. But it was definitely a European game away from home. I think it was in Germany, and they had a really good performance together. But then it got to the point where Carter Vickers was the main guy, and then it was either going to be Jens or Starfelt. And by this point, Starfelt and Carter Vickers had built up a really good partnership. I think it was probably the best defensive partnership we've had in maybe the last at least 10 years anyway. So it was difficult for him to break into that. I always felt at the time that the argument was that Starfelt defended the box better, but probably Moritz Jens was better on the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as much as Ange played out for the back, I think probably Brendan Rodgers has got more of a stoner over ball playing centre halves than what Ange did. And I think that had that been the choice now, I think probably Brendan Rodgers might have went with Jens over Starfelt, and he might have got more of a chance at Celtic under Rodgers. But it transpired that he didn't. I liked Jens and I wanted him to stay. I was a really big fan. For whatever reason, but he wasn't going to get game time. So at the time, it was probably right for the player to move on, because he was at a stage of his career where he came to Celtic, he was looking to get games, and he was a very good player. And he's shown after leaving Celtic he is a really good level player. I think he went to Germany. Did he go to Mainz or something like that? And then I think he moved for there to Schalke. And listen, he's made a good career for himself in German football, and you don't do that if you're a bad player. I would, if Celtic were this summer in the next 2 weeks, said that it's not going to happen, obviously, because we brought in the guy Pusey for Man City. But if somebody said to me at the start of this window, right, okay, we're going to sell Liam Scales, but we're bringing in Moritz Jens. No comparison to Liam Scales, but for me, if Jens comes in to go up against Trusty, it's Jens all day long, and Trusty doesn't even come close to him. I would love to see a guy like that back at Celtic and get a real better opportunity, than what he did previously, because I think he would fit brilliantly into a Brendan Rodgers side.
What was the quoted fee? Was it roughly about 6 million that we would have had to pay if we wanted to secure his services?
I think it was about there or thereabouts, 5 or 6 million it was. And I would have been delighted if Celtic had paid that. I mean, you think back to what we're talking about now, and then that Ange team, once he'd got it to the level he wanted to get it to, you look at it with centre halves, Moritz Jens, Starfelt, CCV. It was just options that you could only dream of, and that's you thought at that moment Celtic were just turning the needle a wee bit, and they were starting to go towards that 2 players for every position, and it did start to go like that for a wee while, and there was maybe about a 6 month to a year period where the squad was at a really, really high level, but it just started to diminish, and then it goes up again, but it's peaks and troughs, I suppose. But right now we're in a bit of a trough. But Moritz Jens, he was a really good player, and I would love to have seen him get a longer deal and a better run in the team at Celtic, because I think he was a Celtic level player, certainly.
Aye, regrettable, really regrettable that we let him go. And whenever you've looked at the subsequent people that we've replaced Starfelt with, you would think that, as you said, that Jens would definitely complement the team if we had secured the services. Well, I have continuing the theme of centre back. I've went for another defender who wore the number 6, and I've chosen Alan Stubbs. And whenever you're talking about centre back pairings, I think he developed one of the best centre-back pairings that we've had at Celtic. It was short-lived, but for when it worked and they were fit, it was brilliant, and we won a league title because of it. So I went for Alan Stubbs. We signed him back in 1996. That was a Tommy Burns signing, and he stayed with us through to the end of Martin O'Neill's first season, although that was actually quite forgettable because he only played a cameo role near the end of his Celtic tenure. But we broke the transfer record for Celtic whenever we signed him from Bolton for 3.5 million. I'd never heard of him, but whenever I remember the back pages of the tabloids seeing Celtic have signed a player for 3.5 million from England, I'm thinking, this is big business. Whenever Fergus McCann came in and we were buying players like Cadet, Van Hooijdonk, you knew that, you're talking about the needle kind of slightly turning. That was a much needed change of direction for Celtic at that time. We needed to. We were strengthening, and the signing of a defender for big bucks like that was a statement of intent. But in his first season, Alan Stubbs under Tony Burns, it didn't really kind of start off the way that we would have wanted. I think he was kind of dogged by inconsistencies and a few niggling injuries. So it took a bit of time for him to settle in Glasgow. It was a trophyless first season, and because of the massive outlay that we'd spent on him, there was some talk that people were writing him off quite early. However, things really dramatically changed whenever Tommy Burns was sacked and we brought in Wim Jansen. And Wim Jansen, what did he do? Well, he brings in Mark Reaper from West Ham, and that really brought out the best in Alan Stubbs, and they formed a really, really impressive partnership. And straight away, that season, I think, what was it, December, roughly around that time, when the finalists played, Celtic ended up winning the League Cup. That was against Dundee United 3-0 at Ibrox. I was actually at that game. I never made the Scottish Cup final against Airdrie, but I was at Ibrox for the win against Dundee United, and that was a brilliant game and it was just a massive confidence boost as well to get the first trophy of the season under your belt, and it really kind of gave us confidence to move on and put down our marker for the league as well. And obviously that season ended with us winning the league at Parkhead against St Johnstone, and Alan Stubbs and Mark Reaper both were part of the defensive solidity that allowed us to actually win that league. Without them two players, I don't think we would have done it. But it was just a fantastic season. I think in that season, Stubbs scored a really, really important goal against Rangers. It was at Parkhead. We were 1-0 down, and it was in the 90th minute when we were barraging. Sorry, a crap word, but when we were attacking the Rangers' goal, and I think it was Jackie McNamara who put in a lofted cross from the right, and Stubbs rose highest, and he put a diagonal header into the far post past Andy Gorham, and that secured a 1-1 result for Celtic, and it was just so pivotal because we only won the league by, I think, 2 points in the end. Massive result, a really well-deserved point. And that was actually a rearranged game. I think I remember it because it was when Princess Diana died, and so the game was rearranged because of that. But yeah, brilliant result in the end. Such an important header. But Alan Stubbs, his partnership with Mark Reaper kind of went off the rails because Mark Reaper had a career-ending foot injury, and that was early in the next campaign after we'd won the league, and that kind of stopped Stubbs and Celtic from being at their best. But despite the kind of defensive partners and indeed managers changing regularly, Stubbs remained a kind of a solid defender for Celtic, and a mostly impressive performer in the hoops, although by that point Rangers had kind of gained the upper hand and then won the next few leagues. But I think what we'll probably all remember, Ross, is when in 1999 there was a random drugs test. It was after a Scottish Cup final against Rangers, and that's when Stubbs found out that he was actually suffering from testicular cancer. And I think everybody gathered around him, full support from the club, from the fans, and he fought back twice from the illness, but that severely limited his appearances for Celtic. And as I said, whenever Martin O'Neill came in, he just played a little more than a cameo role in that treble winning season 2000 and 2001. But I think whenever you look back at Stubbs, he was a fantastic player for us. He was a solid player. He wasn't blessed with pace, but he was good on the ball. He was a good passer. Compared to his other defensive colleagues for Celtic, he was probably looked like an elegant centre half. But I think he really took well to Glasgow eventually whenever he settled in. He loved the fans, and we treated him like he was our own. And then after leaving Celtic, he went down to play for his boyhood club, Everton, and he had a great resurgence, like kind of a second spell in his career where he played regularly for Everton, and he fulfilled obviously a dream turning out for the Toffees. So a great player for Celtic, and he speaks really highly of us as well. And of course, he did us a massive favour. He was the manager of Hibs, and he won the Scottish Cup against them. The Rotten Mob. Nobody will ever forget that, and he goes down as a Highbury legend as well. So overall, great guy and a brilliant player for us. So a good number 6. So if he could play for Celtic nowadays, that'd be quite interesting. Aye.
I think he would do well. He was a good ball player. He was good on the ball, like you said. He was elegant. Another player that could possibly fit into a Brendan Rodgers or an Ange team. When they say he was ahead of his time as such, but he certainly was very good on the ball, and he a lot of qualities that you would want your defender to possess.
Right, mate. Talking about defence as well. I wanted to speak to you about the Alistair Johnson injury. Now, this has really came at the worst possible time. He's going to be out until at least November. I think Brendan Rodgers was saying. So I wanted to ask you, how do we react to this? Do we seek a replacement? Obviously, Anthony Ralston, he's the understudy. He's going to come in. But how confident are we playing the next 6 to 8 weeks with Anthony Ralston? Because we've got massive games, and there'll be a lot of Champions League games, if possible, Champions League or Europa League games that will have to be using Anthony Ralston. And whenever the question was put to Brendan Rodgers during today's press conference, he said that the first thing that he does is look within who do we have in the youth ranks who can step up to the fore. And he mentioned Colby Donovan, an 18-year-old Celtic player who tomorrow he would have been lining up against Gala Fairydean, but instead he's likely to be called up to the squad and be on the bench for Celtic against Livingston at Parkhead. What a massive change for that young man. You wonder if it will have the kind of fairy tale ending like it did for Kieran Tierney when, due to injuries, he was thrust upon the first team. But at the moment, it looks quite bleak. You've got Anthony Ralston at right back, who's a very honest player, but unfortunately, he doesn't have the same ability as the other fullbacks that we've got in the team. So we've got Anthony Ralston, and we've got Colby Donovan, who's never played a professional first team game in his life. How much of a crisis is this, Ross? And do we need to pull out the stops to get an emergency loan signing? Where are you at right now? How significant is this?
Well, it's very significant because Alistair Johnson's one of our top players and has been for a number of years now. He's another player that is like quite pivotal to how we want to play. Well, put it this way. I feel like if we don't sign a right back, I feel like it's getting to the stage where you're looking at a formation change rather than shoehorning young guys in. If Anthony Ralston gets injured, and even then, Anthony Ralston going into hopefully Champions League football, group stage football, it's a scary prospect. We've done it before.
Yeah. PSG.
PSG. He laughed in Neymar's face. Franny used to mention it every podcast. But it's a scary prospect. But then you look at it and go, if there is you could even say, even without Alistair Johnson, could you even look at a slight formation tweak? Because right now it's really not working. Would Ida benefit for having somebody alongside him and playing Ida and Maeda as a 2 up front, and maybe going to, I don't know. I've just thought of this there now, but if Alistair Johnson's out and you're no one to trust Ralston, could you go to a back three? Could you go with Tierney? I would for me, Trusty plays all day long before Scales, but we're talking about Trusty might have this plantar fasciitis as well, so you go to a back three and go Tierney, Scales, CCV, 5-3-5-2 maybe. Have I don't know, it's a difficult one, but it is. Listen, it's not crisis point right now because there is time in the window, and Brendan Rodgers says he'll look within first and sort of like gauge if Donovan is going to be able to come in and do the job. Listen, I've not seen the guy, I've only seen him briefly. I think he played against some Portuguese team in a friendly in the pre-season there, and it was okay, but listen, we're talking about Champions League football here, not friendlies against Portuguese side. So for me, you can look within and have a look at the laddie, but in my opinion, I think we have to look and listen, it's not beyond the realms of possibility you can do it, but we have to look at probably a 6-month loan. Whether it, for me, it would have to be somebody that's going to be playing before Ralston.
Yeah.
But then what does that do to Ralston? Where
I was thinking that if we actually opened the checkbook and signed a legitimate right back, which meant that he would go in ahead of Ralston, I was thinking that earlier on today, that could actually spell the end of Anthony Ralston's Celtic career, because the theory would be that eventually Alistair Johnson returns from injury. We've already bought a new permanent permanent right back who has supplanted Anthony Ralston, and therefore Ralston becomes surplus to requirements. So I was thinking, ironically, AJ getting injured could be the death knell for Anthony Ralston. But
I don't think we sign a right back permanently at this stage of the window. I think it would be a 6-month, maybe a loan. But it has to be the right guy. It can't be like what we did in Rodgers' first season back when we signed the boy for Liverpool that we
Nat Phillips.
mentioned. Nat Phillips, he came in as a 6-month sort of emergency loan, and he wasn't great. So we have to. It would probably come for the Rodgers book, let's say. But for me, I'm no privy to it. Looking within, I'll not be able to have the eyes on Donovan like Rodgers could. But for the outside looking in and just being a fan and knowing what I know, for a fan sort of point of view, we need to get a 6-month loan, good level right back in that's going to play before Anthony Ralston. Anthony Ralston's okay, but he's good enough for the understudy where he's coming in now and again. We can't be going for the next 3 months, hopefully playing Champions League football and relying on Anthony Ralston, because if we do, we'll get found out.
Yeah. And I guess the other fear I've got is particular full-back loan signings that Celtic have made over the years. People who have the heart of a mouse, people like Jeremy Toljan and Edson Braafheid, two players from Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund, but who did not have the heart, did not have the spirit, the mentality, the attitude to actually put in a hard day's shift for Celtic. So I guess that is some fear. And I guess the other thing you need to acknowledge is if Kobe Donovan isn't ready, but he's the only one else who's there to back up Anthony Ralston, it might be really, really unfair to put him into the team if he's not good enough. It could be quite difficult watching. However, we'll see how that pans out. But I think we certainly need to react. It's going to be difficult to put Anthony Ralston into the whatever European games we might or might not be playing this season. So I kind of want to just kind of move on in terms of the transfer window. I just want to kind of briefly say Balak Wisha, that's been held up. Apparently, I've read today that Celtic have sent representatives to Belgium to Royal Antwerp to speak to him, apparently, to convince him to sign for Celtic. I think it's ridiculous. It's maddening that this has actually come to it. And the more I've watched of his YouTube clips, he looks like a terrible, terrible player. Louis Palma's YouTube clips are far superior. This guy looks bad. Just want to put that out there, but I don't want to.
The real I've seen he looked good, to be fair, but it wasn't YouTube. It was just something I seen on Facebook.
Maybe, fuck knows, man. AI. You were watching AI. That's what it was. The other guy, Jacob Broom for Go Ahead Eagles. It looks like we're backing for him. And we might put in a serious offer this time, but I think we're looking at 5 to 6 million if we want to prize him away from Go Ahead Eagles. Again, you know, it's just this. It's been a we're in for him, we're not in for him, we're in for him, we're not in for him. It's just desperation. One question: does Maida want away? Do you have any firm opinion on this? Do you think there's anything to the rumours that he might want away, or do you think it'd be? Do you think he wants to stay? It's a World Cup year as well for Japan, so why would they jeopardise it? He's already seen Kyogo jeopardise his chances for the international call-up by making some bad moves in his career. I would like to think that Maida will stay out this year anyway, but he's in that kind of difficult time where he's got 2 years left on his contract. So this is either the time where the club want them to renew, or they start to look for a club who's willing to buy. But it'd be ridiculous for us to get rid of Maida at this point. It'd be kamikaze, forgive the pun, you know. But it'd be a kamikaze strategy for us to get rid of Maida at this moment when we've got such a crisis ongoing. Where do you stand with it?
Well, off the back of the season that Maida had last season, you would expect there to be teams showing a bit of interest in him.
Yeah.
Whether that be coming for the English Premier League or Germany, a decent level club there, or Italy or whatever. I think Brentford was maybe muted. But listen, it's going to, let's say, prick his ears up, for want of a better phrase. He might want to look at it. He maybe has looked at it. That's his. It's his career. It's up to him. He's entitled to do that. Do you know what I mean? But I really don't see Celtic being that silly to sell Dyson Maida the way we are now.
What if it was 30 million?
I think that would be insane. Any sort of money right now with the front options we've got, Celtic can't be looking at offers for any more of our players in that area of the pitch at the moment. And even if we get the two wingers in that you're talking about, you still can't be looking at selling Dyson Maida. Listen, if offers come in next summer, it might be something that Celtic will look at. It might be something that Maida wants to do. It might be something that they've already sort of agreed in principle. Give us the World Cup year, get your World Cup, and then get your move.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, it would probably make more sense for Maida than it would Celtic. But
yeah, I agree.
Celtic, for me, it just can't happen right now. But like you said, it is a World Cup year. He knows he's going to play for Celtic every week. He knows he's getting picked for Japan, despite playing for Celtic in Scotland. So I just don't see it being a viable option for club or Maeda.
That's good. That's fair enough. Right, Ross, a final question on the transfer window. Adam Ida, should we punt Ida? Now, there was some rumours that there was interest from Italy, but listen to a few Celtic podcasts who are more in the know than me, because I know hee-haw. Apparently, the rumours in Italy were totally fabricated, and I guess there could be a theory that maybe his agent was instructed to create some illusion of interest in Italy, because maybe that's what those blood-sucking people do in order to kind of manufacture a move. So if Celtic were actually in a pass in the next 2 weeks, if we were actually able to make the moves that we need to strengthen and bring in a centre forward or two, would you be willing to let Adam Ida go? Obviously, for a cut price deal, there's no way we're going to get anywhere close to 9 million. You'd be lucky to get 5 million. If we manage to bring in the personnel where we're confident that these guys are going to be strengthening centre forward position, would you be happy to let Adam Ida go?
If we brought in one striker, I wouldn't. If we brought in two, I would be more than happy to let Adam Ida go. I think he's makes his run at Celtic. Well, certainly that's a bit harsh. I think he can offer something. I think he's really low in confidence now. I think he can offer something for the bench. He just can't be Celtic's starting striker. But that said, I don't know how Shin Yamada's going to work out.
He looks like an imposter. Yamada looks like an imposter.
You think?
25 years old, scored 2 goals last season. Now, I know, like, guilty, very, very guilty of judging people early on, but the initial impressions, there's nothing, the ball isn't sticking to Yamada. Whenever I first saw Kyogo, it was whenever he made his debut for Celtic away against Hearts. Toxic atmosphere, and although nothing was really working out for him, he was putting himself about, he was chasing back, and for a wee guy like Kyogo, he was making Hearts players know that he was there. Yamada just looks like he is a caricature of somebody who goes through the motions. He is not a Celtic player, but yeah, I'm totally guilty of making quick judgments on players. Tell me I'm wrong.
That's fair enough. Listen, I've not seen enough of him. I've only seen small snippets of him. The first time I seen him, I felt like I think it was a friendly. I think he actually scored in the penalty shootout. Was it against Ajax? Can't remember. But it was a friendly anyway, and he came on, he did okay, and I thought maybe he's going to be the main man. It hasn't developed, hasn't transpired, but I mean, like, I'm not saying can he be the starting striker. I just mean, is he going to be a guy that you can rely on coming off the bench? I'm not sure. But if we got another 2 strikers in to answer the question, and we got a decent offer at B-cut price, like you say, I wouldn't be raging if Celtic did sell Adam Ida. Put it that way. But I wouldn't be against it. But I wouldn't be saying, just get rid of him. We need to get rid of him because he's so bad. He's not a good player, but can he offer something for the bench like he did last season? Possibly. But it's a tough one.
Time will tell. But I think going from a period not too many years ago where we had Kyogo, Giacomakis vying for the centre forward position to where we're at right now, it's night and day, man. It's like a fucking meteor has hit Celtic Park, and we've been reduced to this rubble that we're now trying to work with. Anyway, moving on. A little kind of very, very brief segment on this day. Normally we speak about on this day an historic event, but 2 kind of weird, quirky ones. On this day, the 22nd of August, back in 1890, quite a long time ago, Ross, I'm sure you'll agree, Peter Dowds became the first Celtic player to net a hat-trick in the league, as Celtic defeated Cambuslang 5-2. There you go. And one other on this day, 22nd of August 1908, an ex-Celtic player, Bobby Templeton, wins a bet to step in a lion's cage and twist its tail. Don't know if that... I don't know what that means. It sounds something that most people wouldn't do. But there it is. 1908. Fucking hell, man. I'm glad he was off our books at the time. Right,
Did he die that year as well? Aye.
Aye. Right, okay, so Celtic and Livingston, we're playing tomorrow, Ross. So I guess this question is twofold in terms of your expectations for tomorrow from a playing perspective, so we can go into the lineup, what you would do and what your expectations are. Can we get a result? Somebody earlier on in the comments, Stephen Murdoch, he said, see us dropping points tomorrow, and I think that's a very, very valid concern. I would not write that out. Martindale, he's a wily operator. I'm not too sure how Livingston have been doing so far this season. I don't know if they've got a win yet under their belt, but like, he's been there, he's done it. He knows how to set up a team. The last time I remember us playing Livingston, they looked like they resembled a basketball team. So expect plenty of physicality, plenty of height. So I guess, if they're going to take their opportunity, it might well be tomorrow. So that was one question I've got for you in terms of your expectations, lineup, etc. But I guess the other thing, and I'll probably come to you about that right now, is in terms of the atmosphere. I anticipate a barely concealed level of toxicity within the crowd, and that's a reflection of the attitude towards the board, which has been compounded with the result from Wednesday night. I think it's just too fresh in our minds. I don't think we've been able to kind of move on from it yet, because we're still halfway through that qualifier. I think that we're a ball here away from people again starting to sing "Sack the Board." People standing up in their seats. I sit in the south stand, and whenever you see people standing up in their seats and shouting abuse towards the board, it really, really hits home. It really, really does hit home, Ross. So I guess the first question I wanted to get to you was about the volatility tomorrow at Parkhead, the atmosphere. Think people are going to be on edge. I really, really believe that, and it's not like I'm hoping for that. It's just that's what I feel. I know what the atmosphere was like when I was walking home on Wednesday night, and I think it's just going to be a continuation. It's going to be part 2 tomorrow. What's your impressions on that?
I think it'll start as normal, and I think that if the game doesn't start well in the first 20 minutes, half an hour, and they don't get that early goal, they don't get in front, they're showing an abject performance again, and I think that unrest will start to come for the stands again, and because they'll be frustrated with the players not performing, the signings not being in to help the players that are already there, and it'll just start brewing again, and it'll rear its head at some point in the game. And the problem also is, probably to answer your other question in terms of the expectations for the game, the issue we've got tomorrow is that the 2 games previously we've struggled at Parkhead was obviously the game on Wednesday night where the team sat in, were stuffy, had a low block. The other game was St Mirren, again, stuffy, as you said earlier. Good professionals that know how to try and eke out a result, defend, and Livingston are a carbon copy of that as well. It's what they pride themselves on. It's against almost every team in the league. It's so bad to watch, but if there was a team in the league that I didn't want Celtic to face on Saturday after that performance on Wednesday night, it's Livingston. It's the Davy Martindale's Livingston. They're so stuffy. They're big, they're physical, they're strong, they're pish, and it's the exact team that you wouldn't want to face. But the only good thing is it's at home.
Sorry for interrupting, mate, because you were in phone, you were making a lot of sense. Livingston, they've actually, so obviously everybody's played 2. They've won 1 game and they've drawn. They've scored 5 goals already in 2 games. And
they got a draw at Rugby Park.
Scored 5, conceded 3, but they've already got 4 points on the board from 2 games. So for a newly promoted team, they've hit the ground running. So as you say, it's not the type of team that you want to face whenever we're in this kind of crisis. Aye,
no, it absolutely isn't. I think in this game on Saturday, we have to get an early goal, not only to try and stem the sort of the frustrations and the anger of the crowd, but also in the game itself to get a foothold in it and sort of bring Livingston out a wee bit and make them have to come at us a wee bit and try and get back in the game, because they'll be quite happy getting a point. We need an early goal to really calm things down and just let us get into our sort of flow. I expect there to be a few changes. I think Roger sort of alluded to it in his conference earlier on the day. Do you want me to give you a lineup?
Please go ahead. Yes.
Right, so let's go Kasper Schmeichel, I would imagine. It's going to be Anthony Ralston. I don't think there'll be a formation change like I talked about earlier briefly. I think it'll be Ralston, Scales, Carter Vickers, Tierney play 70 minutes, 75 minutes. I think your midfield will be Cal McGregor again.
Can I please ask you? I'm sorry. So say Kieran Tierney does have to come off, which he has been doing every single game so far in the second half. He comes off because Trusty is injured. We normally move Scales in to cover Tierney. So what happens at that point if we do have to make a change for Tierney? How do you reshuffle the pack?
Tierney comes off, Scales goes out to left back, and Pusey comes on for Tierney.
Or the other boy, Dane Murray. Aye,
or Murray, aye. But you would expect it to probably be Pusey because Murray's right-sided.
That's true.
But listen, by the way, it might even be Dane Murray at starts. We might keep Carter Vickers for the game on Tuesday night. I would even go with that. I would probably go Murray and Scales. I don't think he would go Murray and Pusey.
They'd get bullied by Livingston if they did that. And even Dane Murray, if he does start, I know that he's a big guy, but they will still target him because he might be an unknown quantity. Yeah.
Aye, no, that's a really good point. Let's just stick with Carter Vickers. I think he can play 2 games in a week. That's not a problem for CCV. So I will stick with the back four that I said. The midfield, it'll be Cal McGregor. I would expect Luke McCown to come into the team and probably Arne Engels.
Yeah.
And then your front three, I think that he's going to stick with Ida. As much as I don't really want him, but I think he'll stick with Ida. And it'll probably be, I think it'll be Jan and Maeda.
I agree. Forrest obviously played the majority of the game Wednesday night, and Yang for his energy. I think we'll probably start with him. He'll be more fresher for tomorrow. And yeah, Maeda and Ida, we can't drop them. We're depending on them, even though both of them are not performing to where we hoped that they would be. But yeah, so you said that Trusty's out. What was the injury that Trusty got? I read it and I'd never heard of it before in my life. I don't know what it means.
It's plantar fasciitis.
Is that a Harry Potter spell?
Well, it does sound like that. I think my wife's actually had it, and my mate that sometimes get a handout on jobs. He suffers from rheumatoid arthritis, and he's got plantar fasciitis in both feet, and he says it is so painful. Like he takes medication for it, but he's got it off of this arthritis. But he takes medication for it, but he says it's so painful. And I think Rogers had kind of highlighted that when you plant your foot, ironically, it's I don't know how to describe it. If that's your foot, it's like sort of in there, I think. So when you plant your foot, it must be like the tendons or something are inflamed or something like that. I'm not a doctor by any stretch, but it is supposed to be a really painful thing. There's probably some folk in the comments experienced it, I would guess, because it's quite a common thing.
We've got our very own Pork Chop Express. Hope you're doing well. You got it in his left foot, and
there you go.
Obviously, it's very, very painful. So hopefully, Trusty recovers from that. It's not going to be an ongoing thing that affects him. And Ross, I totally agree with your Celtic lineup. I would go the same, and we're kind of backs to the wall right now with personnel. It's such a ridiculous position that we find ourselves in right now. We don't even have that many injuries. Obviously, Jota's out, Alistair Johnson's out, Trusty's out, but regardless of that shouldn't affect us so much. But it's just the fact that we've really, really failed to freshen up, bring in the players. We're waiting too late in the window. And as a consequence of that, it's putting our league game in jeopardy in terms of being able to get 3 points, and certainly jeopardises the success that we want to get through to the Champions League. So really, really bad position. And as we've spoken about the board earlier on, I think the majority of the blame does lie with them. Now,
I think that Gavin, I think the biggest issue is we have no. It's probably the most important area of the pitch where you score goals that we are lacking. That's why it's so glaring at the minute. I think if it was maybe, all right, we need a left winger and we maybe need a right back, for talking sake, it maybe wouldn't be as glaring. But because it's basically right across that front three, obviously excluding Maeda, you could say, but we still need two. We're missing two levels of quality in that front three. It's so glaring that it's really affecting the way we perform.
It's bleak.
It's in an attacking sense, anyway.
Adam Ida, Johnny Kenny, Yamada, Callum Osmond. Such a bleak situation. But there's still time left in the window. So I guess the hope is that the board have some sort of strategy, and that come the 2nd of September, we'll have people in the door, and it will change the complexion of it. Obviously the timing is unforgivable, but if they can bring in the bodies, then hopefully that propels us, because if they fail to deliver in these remaining days, then even the challenge that Rangers are going to put up, we're laughing at them for being...
The Sharks will be it.
That was what you're doing. Absolutely, mate. Absolutely fucking hammerhead getting chucked in.
Even I'll be raging.
But as I said, if they fail to deliver in the remaining few games, then we can no longer rely on the perceived superiority that we have over Rangers. And the game at Ibrox that's coming up, fast approaching, that'll be massive as well. So I guess the hope is the last thing that you cling on to. It's the hope that kills you. But they have to deliver. And as I said, the timing is unforgivable. But if they bring in the players that we need, then maybe we can salvage a season which was looking in jeopardy. But anyway,
put it this way, Gavin. Sorry, I was just going to say, put it this way: if we get through the tie on Wednesday night, and then we bring in the players that are required, and I think now that is a striker, a winger, a backup left back, and now a right back emergency alone. So that was 4 players. I think if we get the 4 players in and we somehow get through this tie, it'll be more luck than design for the Celtic board.
Yeah. The design has been awful, maddening, and they've only got themselves to blame. It really, really is such a bad state of affairs. But we'll continue on. So we've got the game tomorrow. What's your prediction then for the result?
I'm going to go 2-0 Celtic.
2-0. I was thinking that as well. Aye, Livingston has scored 5 goals already, but as you said, they did play Kilmarnock, and Kilmarnock have been quite shite.
I think Kilmarnock 2-0 up in that game as well.
Were they? Okay. I didn't watch the game. I'm just assuming.
No, I just seen it in the highlights.
Right. I'll mirror your prediction 2-0. I'm terrible with predictions anyway. And let's hope that one of our strikers actually scores, because nobody has scored. None of our strikers have scored. I mean, centre forward anyway. Right, okay. Ross, I totally appreciate you coming on. I know that you weren't scheduled to come on tonight, but your appearance has allowed us to do a podcast tonight. So thank you so much for that. You're off to do you're starting a wee health kick. You're doing a run tomorrow. Is that correct? What time are you up at in the morning?
Well, I'm training for a marathon, so this is one of my bigger runs. So I'm well into the marathon training now. The marathon's on the 28th of September. Me and Franny are doing it. But I've got
you did it last year as well, didn't you?
No, I done a half marathon last year, but I did a full marathon about 4 years ago. But I've got 17 mile to run tomorrow, and then I'm getting up at 4:30 to be out for 6 because it's my wee girl's birthday this weekend, and we've got a day out in Glasgow tomorrow, and then Sunday we've got family coming over, so I need to try and squeeze the run in early doors before I catch the train at 11 o'clock into Glasgow. So I'll be all go for 4:30, but as soon as I come off here, I'll be heading straight to my bed.
Brilliant. Well, you're a great example to all of us. Maybe one day I'll follow in your footsteps. But again, thank you so much for coming on tonight and allowing me to vent. And you've helped balance things out. So thank you for that. And to everybody in the comment section, thank you very, very much for tonight. Thank you for watching. Thank you for getting your comments in. And I guess we'll just cross our fingers and hope for the best that we can get a result tomorrow and again on Tuesday, and maybe things can turn around. But as I said, it's the hope that kills you. So I guess we'll finish up for tonight. We'll hopefully be back next Friday for another Endless Celts podcast. But from me and from Ross, all the best. Good night, guys. Cheerio.
Cheers, guys.